So let's take the prayer and begin. Master of all worlds, highest power, merciful parent of compassion, in your presence, eternal one, source of strength for us, as you have been for our ancestors, we very humbly acknowledge you. What are we? What is our life that you have done such great kindness to us? Therefore, we place our appeals before you, so that you may forgive and absolve us of all our faults and failings. Let our faults never become barriers between us and you. And may it be your desire
to
prepare our
hearts
hearts to feel awe
and love for you.
May you listen to these words of ours,
of ours.
and may you open
Open
our
our
encumbered hearts
through the mysteries of your Torah.
May
May
this
this
study
study
source of pleasure,
before your throne, sweet
sweet
incense.
incense.
Like sweet incense.
May you shower down upon us
On us,
light of our
light
soul
of our
source
soul source.
in all the ways.
All the ways by which we
find ourselves.
May the
the
sparks of
Spark
our
of your holy
servants
servants,
to whom you have
you
revealed
have
these words shine.
shine and sparkle.
May their
May
merit
their merit, their ancestors' merit,
Merit,
and merit of their Torah,
their Torah,
their innocence and their
and their
holiness,
holiness.
stand for us so as to prevent us from stumbling when we study these words.
When we study these words.
In their merit, may
Merit,
our eyes be
may our
illumined by
eyes
what we
be
study.
illumined
In the saying of the sweet singer of Israel, open my eyes that I may gaze into wonders of your Torah. May the words of my mouth and the thoughts of my heart be acceptable to you, my rock and my redeemer. For it is the Eternal who grants wisdom. It is from his mouth that knowledge and understanding is forth.
Na, 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 na 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 Good. All right, we're at page 299. And we're in the middle of this juxtaposition that the Zohar makes between what Isaac blesses, the words that Isaac uses in the blessing to Jacob, and it puts it in parallelism with the curses that were inflicted on the serpent and the world, all the way back at the beginning of the story, back in Bereshit, with the first couple and the devious, deceptive serpent. And we read already the on 299. We read "Come and see" what that serpent inflicted, but we can read it again and take it to heart what was going on here. So invitation out there, open invitation. Who wants to read? Oh, look at that! What a surprise, Beryl. All right.
Can you actually hear me? Because I can't get my computer to open, and that's my phone.
I see. This is your phone. Yeah. All right. Good.
Oh, wow! Hallelujah! I think it's waking up.
Well, I'm going to admit the other Beryl.
Thank you.
All right. How do I know which Beryl is the real Beryl? Maybe one of you is just dressed up as Beryl, and the other one is, all right. But I can see you're coming in.
All right. Let me leave.
You're leaving that, and you're coming in the other one. All right. Are you? So where is your other one? There you are. All right. So good.
You need to unmute.
A word from a bat call from heaven above telling you have to unmute.
A Ben call.
A Ben call, right. Very good. All right.
Unmute. All right. Hallelujah.
So fourth line from the top of the page. Come and see.
Come and see, and I'm on page 298 or 299.
299.
Okay, come and see. Come and see. When that serpent inflicted curses upon the world, and the earth was cursed, what is written? To Adam he said, since you listened to the voice of your wife, cursed is the ground because of you, not yielding fruit or verdure fittingly, conversely, and of the fat of the earth.
Right, so you'll be blessed from the fat of the earth. So this is again a converse juxtaposition, and we talked about it last time, that was listening to Chava, listening to Eve, who had a bad idea because she was misled by the serpent. And here we have listening to Rivka, listening to Shekhinah, who is not misled, but who prevents Isaac from being misled by helping Yaakov set things right. So this is what the Zohar is introducing, that we have a tikkun, we have a repairing of a problem that started all the way at the beginning of the story, and it waited until now to be finally set to rights. Go ahead.
By painful toil you will eat of it. Conversely, of the dew of heaven, thorns and thistles it will sprout for you. Conversely, abundance of grain and new wine.
Okay, so here we have again and again, a reversal of the curses. And it's not just the curse that the serpent was cursed and the serpent will remain cursed, but the earth was cursed. The earth was cursed as a kind of a surrogate for the human beings who were supposed to be cursed by death, right? That's what God originally said. Don't eat from this tree. If you do, that's it for you. So instead, what God does is God does not kill Adam and Eve, but God sort of deflects the punishment onto the earth. And the earth, instead of it being a Garden of Eden, constantly sprouting new life, the life that the earth puts forth only comes from toil, from sweat. By the sweat of your brow shall you eat bread, etc. And of course, then women are also, they bring forth life only with pain. So this blessing is a blessing that overcomes all of that, pain and suffering and lack and struggle. Everything is just pouring forth deliciously and abundantly. Okay.
Okay. By the sweat of your brow you will eat bread. Conversely, may peoples serve you, tilling the earth and cultivating the field, as is said, foreigners will be your plowmen and vine dressers.
All right, so how is this, what's happening here? Now we have a slightly different idea. It's not about the fruitfulness of the earth that is being restored. What is it? What's the flipping here? What's the repair? What is being repaired? What's the problem that is here being fixed? Yeah, Craig.
We won't have to work to earn our daily bread. Other people will do it for us.
So, right. So here we get into it, something that's a little tricky, right? Because the first story is a universal story. The first story is for the whole world. It's the first human beings. They stand for all human beings, everywhere, always. And now we get a little bit of a narrowing of focus. Clearly, the fixing of that terrible, cursed failure of humanity is achieved by Jacob. And Jacob is not all of humanity. Jacob is Israel. So now all of a sudden, from something that was very broadly applied, what we have to the earth and so on, what we have now is that people were cursed with the curse of having to work hard for a living. And now the repair is only partial, isn't it? It's really only, or there's two ways to read it. One way is it's partial. Only Israel gets the reprieve. Only Israel gets the reprieve of not having to work hard and sweat and be so stressed to try to get the earth to supply their needs. And so Israel gets the reprieve, and it's great. Look at what we can sit back, and all the rest of humanity will work for us, right? We'll be the CEOs, and we'll have the plantation, and all of our happy workers will be delighted to supply us with everything that we need. It's not, in our consciousness today, that it doesn't, necessarily sit so beautifully, when you think about it that way. I don't know that the Zohar, I do know the Zohar was not troubled by that. the Zohar is inheriting this idea from the Gemara, from the rabbis. So this is an old idea. We could push it even to a more unhappy reading, which is, no, it's not a partial fixing. It's a total fixing, because only Israel is humanity, and everybody else is not really humanity, right? Which is part of sometimes the Zohar's approach to the world. So then it's not a question of selectivity. There is no selectivity. Human beings were cursed at the beginning of time with after they betrayed God. They were punished. And now human beings are being restored because human beings are people of Israel. That is humanity. And nobody else. This is what would be called Jewish suprematism.
Hey, Reb,
Yes.
what's the word that they use in the Torah for foreigners in this phrase, you know?
No, so here it's amim, lumim, peoples.
Peoples.
I'm going to look it up. I'm going to look it up for you. Just half a second. Oh, but then there's no. Then the other one. That's in Yeshaya. Right, in Yeshaya, I have to look it up. Yeah, 61.
Foreigners will be your plowmen and
Yeah. Let me look it up. Let me get the exact word. In the bracha, in the blessing that Isaac gives, it's lumim, I think. But here
yes, it is lumim.
peoples.
Yeah, lumim is that.
Right, but here we're talking about 61.5. Hold on.
How is this different from people from
Wait.
Gutenberg?
Let me just look here, right? Zarim, strangers. Right? Yeah, Zarim. That's right. Where is it? Ve'amdu Zarim, ve'ra'ut zonchem, uvenei nechar, and people who are foreign, right? Ikarechem will be your farmers v'chormeichem and tend your vineyards. So that's yeah. So it's either Zarim or B'nai Nechar, right? Of a strange, alien, other group. Yeah, David.
I can think of two extremes in modern day times where people from India come on visas and work as software engineers here in the US, or people from Mexico come up to pick our crops. Doesn't strike me maybe as that different. They're employees here, so.
I'm very happy when somebody gets a job that they can get paid a living wage and then have all their needs met. But that's not what this is saying. What this is saying is they'll work so that we don't have to work. It's not about open employment for everybody. We'll all work together and everybody will have abundance and everybody will be able to afford their housing and everybody will be able to pay for their children's education and for healthcare. This is not a universal vision. This is a vision of we'll sit back and we'll have people fanning us and feeding us our grapes and doing all the work that we don't have to do.
So it sounds like slavery, maybe.
Yeah, it's when you talk about what the second example, the people that are coming in here and doing the high-tech work, they're doing high-tech work along with other people who are doing high-tech work. So Gesundheit hate. The people that are coming in to do the menial labor, they're doing menial labor that we don't want to do. And they are paid garbage and they are treated like garbage. So that's the problem. It's when it's not, an equal opportunity reality. So either way, either there's a problem here, either way. Either this is just a selective solution. We get the blessing and the rest of the world has to take care of us, or we are the world and everybody else is a secondary level of humanity and doesn't really count. Either way, it's not so great. But these are some of the darker kinds of pictures that fantasies of the Jewish people and we'll see it. It's going to play out some more, but this is, the defense is this is created. These fantasies are created by people who themselves are oppressed. So unfortunately, what they do is they see the repair of their own oppression by becoming the lords over everybody else. This is a very human thing also, and it's a danger that applies to every oppressed group and every beleaguered group, that not to turn into your oppressor, to get revenge, and not to take those values and internalize them for yourself. But here, there it is. I mean, this is where we are. This is what it is. Any other comments? Okay, good. Yeah.
So
Jake.
am I reading?
Middle of the page. Jacob obtained all.
Okay, Jacob obtained all, one balancing the other, taking what was his. The Blessed Holy One brought it about that Jacob received these blessings so that he would cleave to his sight and share. And so Esau would cleave to his sight and share.
So the Zohar is saying that, what we would expect the Zohar to say, this is all from God's working. God is accomplishing this. This is God making things turn out the way that they should. We had before, Shekhinah comes in with Jacob. So Jacob deserves that kind of help because Jacob is a righteous person. Esau does not deserve that kind of help because Esau, as pictured by the Zohar and by the rabbis before, is a man of violence, bloodshed, deceit, and lack of real values. That's the worst of all. Just kidding. And so therefore it had to be rectified in that way. I wanna bring up what we've had already a couple of times, that this is what the rabbis called midah keneged midah, right? Measure for measure, poetic justice. That the villain across time, in the form of a serpent or in the form of Esau, the villain is deceptive. The villain gets what they want by not playing by the rules, by being manipulative and lying. How do you defeat that villain? How do you punish that villain? By deception and by being manipulative and lying. And that's what Jacob has to do. One of the Mefarshim, one of the commentators says, why didn't God just simply come to Isaac, in a vision and say, Isaac, you're getting fooled. Esau is not a good guy. Esau is the bad guy. Jacob is the good guy. Why didn't God just tell Yaakov, Yitzchak, the truth? So why do we need this being fooled? Why do we need this whole roundabout way of dealing with this? And the answer is sort of being laid out here by the Zohar. But does somebody want to say it in their own words? How would we understand why not just do it straight? Why this convoluted stuff? Right, I think you're all right. I think that's correct. So Yashikoa, yes, that's the real answer. Okay, yeah, just having a good time tonight. What the Zohar and what this commentator, makes more explicit, but what the Zohar is saying is, and we've talked about this in other ways as well, once lying, deceit, convoluted manipulations and so on, once they're in the world, they have to be dealt with. So they can't simply be dealt with by a silver bullet, by God waving God's hand and saying, okay, let me just take the wool off from your eyes and show you the truth. the reality of deception is part of the reality means it's part of this world, this created world of God, and therefore deception itself needs to be redeemed. The deceiver may not be redeemed, but deception needs to be redeemed. That element of the way that the world works, that element needs to find its proper place, so that it's not simply this, ongoing antimatter, right? This force of evil, this force of darkness. There has to be a way of justifying its power. And the answer is that it's useful to fight against itself, right? It actually has a righteous justification when it is used to combat the forces of evil themselves. So that's how it wins its place back in the ecology of reality. All right. I mean, it begs the question, why did it have to be that way? We've talked about that ad nauseum. So we're going to leave it at that.
Rabbi,
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Rabbi Chizkiah. Good.
But we see that later Esav received the fat of the earth and the dew of heaven, as it's written, here from the fat of the earth will be your dwelling, and from the dew of heaven above.
So this is Isaac's blessing to Esav. So Rabbi Chizkiah is saying, what are you giving me this whole speech here about how all of this is a rectification of the curses on the land and so on? Even Esav got the same blessing. So what is it applies to Esav as well. Hold on a second, I have to look at the chat. There are comments here that I need to look at. It says there are two comments. What I see is one. Oh, because does is one comment, and then doesn't that apply to your vision of inequity? Okay, so expand on that, please, Mark.
Okay, so your whole thing about how you shouldn't use people. If we're using people because we're such wonderful people, doesn't that redeem the bad use of people? Doesn't that justify slavery in terms of white supremacy and justify every single horror? I mean, the reason I didn't answer your first question was because I don't like to give the answer that I have to give to almost everything that I read in the Torah. And that is, these are familiar tropes in every single culture. So the trope of the trickster is found in every single mythological culture. Now, of course, we want to think of the Torah as somehow special, but the fact is that many of the things that bother us are common in all cultural attempts to understand the problem of evil and the battle between right and wrong. So that's why I didn't want to say anything. But now that you got me talking, I'm talking too much always.
No. You didn't get to the core of it. Well, you did sort of, but I'm going to go back to a detail, an easy to me, an easy parry of a claim that you're making. And look, there's no reason why the Torah shouldn't be, in many ways, completely universal in the way that it operates. Because hey, you know what? It's about human beings. It's about people. It's about the world. It starts with the world, and it's grappling with how to deal with this world. So, which brings me to the simple example that you gave. The trickster as a figure is not completely commensurate to Jacob. Jacob is not a trickster. The problem with Jacob is exactly that he's not a trickster. The problem with Jacob is that he is a trickster, but he's not a trickster. When tricksterism becomes problematized, that's a different move. And again, with unfair generalizations, but the tiny little bit that that I know, tricksters are not necessarily problematic. They are seen, yes, there's this core idea that tricksters set things aright. They, the emperor's not wearing any clothes. They puncture pomposity, they puncture lies, and so on and so forth. And that's a good thing, in the picture that we have, and we enjoy that, and that's why we enjoy comedy in general in many ways. But this is a kind of a tragic tricksterism. What the Jewish tradition is doing is it's doing this with a sense that, but wait a second, but why do we, again, the question I ask people, why can't we just get it straight? Why do we need this tricksterous stuff? And it excuses tricksterism in very limited kinds of events. And it doesn't celebrate tricksterism as something that needs to be adopted, or all the time, and even totemized with people.
Okay,
So,
so I'm sorry I confused the issue. Let's go back to my original point, the thing I put in the chat, that if tricksterism redeems evil tricksterism, why doesn't inequity in the name of the Jews redeem inequity?
So to a certain extent, that's the argument, like I said before. I think that's part of the argument of when I say this is an oppressed people saying that we're going to get our oppressors, we're going to get them right back. And that is correct. So inequity is defensible as a revenge against evil people. That's, I think, one line of argument. I'm not adopting that line of argument. So my struggle would be to say that the inequity is in a battle against evil. Now, you can throw it back at me, 1 second, you can throw it back at me but it's not quite the same thing. When we have racist slavery, in our global history, all over the place, it means treating people as less than human. It's there's nothing to excuse it about, right? It's a little different than treating people as the embodiments of evil. So, I don't know if this is going to be adequate or if it holds up completely. The terrible thought that I think of is that Hitler didn't want to enslave Jews. Hitler wanted to exterminate Jews.
Yeah.
Because they weren't simply lower beings that could be used like a donkey can be used to carry burdens. They were evil. Now, maybe that's poetic justice against, Jewish racism. That's what some people even say to this very day. You thought you were the chosen people, so what's the difference between you and Aryan nation? But if you could actually succeed in identifying what is really evil, then that evil does have to be fought. And it has to be fought by hook or by crook, because that evil really is trying to destroy everything. So how do you know? That's the question that we've also touched on many times. It's very hard to give a theoretical answer to that. And you know what? By now, it's almost impossible to even just talk about reality, because nobody sees reality the same way anymore. But back in the good old days, when there was a possibility of thinking that you could actually just see reality for what it was, yes, there's a reality of people who are murderers and evil and trying to enslave people, and they have to be fought.
So the people who were going to support Jacob were justifiably punished in their role as the life support for Jacob and the Jewish people? I mean,
I'm not following.
I'm just going back to the analogy.
Go ahead, but you have to say it in a way that I'm gonna get
The
clipped.
world is cursed, and then the world is uncursed, and the nature of the uncursed is that Jacob gets free lunch at the expense of other people. So that means that those other people had to be bad and deserve to be serfs.
That's correct. That's the racism here. Correct. That's what I'm saying is ugly and terrible here.
But if the Jews are really better than everybody else,
But that's not the thing. That's the racism part. That's if the Jews have a concept of goodness and they see it, then they need to live it and they need to fight for it. But then the trick is, can you identify it or not? We've talked about this other times where I say Abraham says to Pharaoh or to Avimelech, can't remember which one he says it to. Avimelech, Avimelech says, what's wrong with you? Why did you lie to me? And Abraham says, because there's no fear of heaven here. There's no, you guys are evil. So I'm doing it. I'm doing a Jacob, right? Avant la lettre. So I pointed out, more than once, my reading of that text is that that's a critical text against Abraham. He's misusing that because he's misjudging the person he's dealing with. And that's a terrible danger. Yes, that's acknowledgeable. That's acknowledged that we can be totally wrong about our prejudices and our judgments of other people. And judgments are very powerful tools of oppression. Judging somebody else to be subhuman or to be an enemy of the state or to be bad in some other kind of way is a really great, effective way of exerting terrible power on the other. And if it's used wrong, it's terribly used wrong. That's the agon here, that because it's so susceptible to abuse, it needs to be used, to be used and not abused. The use of it says, okay, so at least, why were guns invented? There's an old Purim song that we don't sing anymore, right? Once there was a wicked man, and Haman was his name, sir. And then one of the stanzas, if Mordechai says, if guns were but invented now, this Haman I would shoot, sir. So we're not allowed to sing that song anymore. But part of that, idea is there is some reason why guns could be used well, and if we could figure out the right way to use guns, then guns have a rightful place in reality. If the only reason guns exist is for people to go around murdering each other, then that becomes a horror. That becomes a scandal of reality. Beryl.
So if a farmer uses a gun to kill armadillos that are invading their crop, we're okay, because if he doesn't have a crop to sell, he doesn't have a way to live and feed his family. And
Right. But if he could only talk to the armadillo and explain to the armadillo that they shouldn't do what they were doing, then it would be better. But there's a whole move against armadillos these days. They were starting to be demonized, that they're the COVID people and all that kind of stuff. So just kidding. Yes.
But Rabbi?
Yeah.
So separate from the racism and the tool of a gun or not, this seems more about the intention rather than, a good or bad use of a gun. It's deceit and deception and using the evil side.
And the intention is, what's the intention?
The intention is to deceive and to not be
No.
straight.
No, the intention is to defeat evil. The mean,
Using deceit.
correct. That's the mean.
That's the only. It sounds like that's the only mean. From what we said, the only way to fight that kind of evil
That's what's being.
is
That's
to
what's,
be that. Is to be that kind of evil in the battle.
That's where the Zohar is trying to wiggle out of that problem by saying that it depends what you're deceiving for. The intent is the criterion. If I'm going to deceive you into making peace with your neighbor, that's not evil.
But evil.
Hold on. In Pirkei Avot, so we were studying this last week, the week before. Be one of the students of Aaron, right? Ohev shalom v'rodev shalom, a person who loved peace and who ran after peace. So what is the story that the rabbis tell among different stories? That Aaron would find out that two people were angry at each other. They became real enemies. They weren't talking to each other, maybe worse. What would he do? He would go over to Shmerel and would say, Shmerel, I was talking to Beryl, not Beryl, but Beryl, and Cheryl. He was talking to Cheryl. So Cheryl and Shmerel were at each other's throats. So he says to I forgot the names already, A and B. So he says to him, I was talking to your enemy, and he really regrets it. And he really, he would love to, come over and make peace, but he's embarrassed, he's proud, he's really, but he sees the error of his ways. He's lying. Aaron is lying. He's trying to fool Shmerel into thinking that Beryl wants to make peace with him. Then so Shmerel starts going, oh, wow, that's, what, maybe he really is a human being. Then he runs before Shmerel can go over to Beryl. He runs over to Beryl, not Beryl, but Beryl, and says to Beryl, I was talking to Shmerel, and Shmerel did the same thing, blah, 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 right? So he lies to Beryl, not Beryl, but Beryl. And as a result, each one of them starts thinking differently of the person that they couldn't hate, they couldn't take them before. They hated them in their guts. So it's all deceit. It's all manipulation. It's all false.
So
it's sheker, but it's the most beautiful thing that Aaron gets praised for. Why? Because it's about making people get over their hatred, getting all the opposite of what we're talking about here. So deceit per se is not the problem. For instance, again, one more for instance. God says to Abraham, you're going to have a kid. Sarah laughs and says, what? I'm going to have a kid with that altakaker? And then God says to Abraham, what's Sarah so skeptical about? She said that, I'm going to have a kid. I'm so old. So all the rabbis say, God lies to Abraham, and God deceives Abraham into thinking that Sarah was laughing about herself when she was really laughing in dismissal of Abraham. And the reason was shalom bayis. God wanted to keep this relationship going. They needed to have a kid together. He wanted them to be at peace with each other. So he told a lie. So deceit per se is not the greatest evil in the world. The question is it being used to serve evil or not?
So is the Zohar going so far as to say, evil isn't the problem? There's this messy situation that we have with Esav, who is evil, and that's the world you live in. You gotta deal with it. Is that what's being said in any way, or am I?
I don't understand the way you're formulating it. I mean,
so it's not about annihilating the evil itself.
Esav is not annihilated. Esav is not destroyed.
Right, because because evil is a part of this world.
Right. Esav just has to be, as we're going to continue to see, Esav just has to be put in his place where he can't hurt other people. Right. So, but sometimes, Amalek, we're not going to deal with every single part of this problem like we always try to. But in this case, it's not about, to put it again very clearly, it's not about destroying the power of evil. It's about destroying the prospect of evil ruling the world. It's about preventing evil from getting enough power to never be able to be outvoted,
So the end,
never be able to be unseated.
The end justifies the means.
So maybe, you know, if you want to look at it in that way, yes, that's the problem that's being dealt with here again and again. And in a certain sense, that could be said, yes. That the Zohar is saying that deceit is a means and it needs to be used when it's necessary.
I want to get back to the blessing, because the blessing is different. I can understand
The blessing for Esav and the blessing for Jacob
the blessing for Jacob
is different from what?
It's a different situation. It's one situation to try and get rid of the evil, but it's another situation to use people for the benefit of people who are good. I don't think those are parallels. And the blessing throughout the Psalms everywhere is always, you know, everyone's going to come there and they're going to bring all of they bring you jewels and you're going to get rich and you're going to walk on rubies and, you know, now, you know, I mean, you can look at this as a fantasy, which is my tendency, you know, just sort of old-time poetry. But if you look at it as important, as real, then you have to justify the idea that certain people should get benefits based upon the lack of advantage to other people. And you can call that racism or you can call it supremacy, and you can condemn Judaism from our point of view, but that is completely integrated into many of the Psalms and in a great deal of the Bible, not only the Torah, but, you know, the other books. The idea that the success of Jews is dependent upon their superiority and their supremacy over others in the long run.
Yeah, I think that can be super, super problematic and bad. Not just problematic, but bad. However,
why is it bad?
What?
Why is it bad?
It's bad because it's using other people who shouldn't be used. They're people. They have the same, that's what I was saying before. If you want to say everybody will be rich, everybody will be happy, everybody will be enjoying the sunshine, that's great. But if you're saying I'm going to subjugate everybody else for my benefit, that's wrong.
Unless you believe in meritocracy and you believe that since Jacob is the epitome of God on earth, then naturally he should get all of the rewards, just like everyone should.
No, the difference between meritocracy and racism is that meritocracy is about earning something and racism is about essentialism. So meritocracy says anybody that merits goodness should be that merits being good or that merits doing, should be rewarded. That merits a reward. Anybody should be able to merit a reward.
But by definition, Jacob merits the reward because he is the epitome of the unification of God on earth.
So when that is put into the theory of God itself and evil and good, so yes, good is better than evil, essentially. When you apply it to human history, to groups, to Israel and the nations, then you have to answer to real, records. Who's being good and who's not being good. The fact that I'm Israel doesn't make me good. It doesn't make me better than anybody else. That's the racism danger. Now, what we could say though instead is that why should the vision be that I should get all these rubies and stuff, to use your words? The answer is reparations. That this is a vision of reparations, because Judaism from the beginning is a besieged group and a besieged worldview. Now, if you want to say that's a paranoia and that's a self delusion that is at the foundation of Judaism, which some people say, then that's one thing. I think I read it as that's what I was trying to say in shorthand before. that when you have an oppressed group, how they see their situation being rectified can take on different ways of being pictured. And those images have at least some explanation by the fact that they are suffering. So when Israel sees itself as the whole world will finally recognize that we're right, before we get to the material benefits thereof, what they're reflecting is the whole world thinks that we are full of it, in the most innocuous situation, and the whole world sees us as actually very dangerous because of our crazy ideas, and will and seeks to harm us as a result. One day they'll see that actually what we're talking about is the truth, and they'll bring gifts, and they'll be happy with us, and they'll they'll pay us back just the way the Egyptians paid us back when we left Egypt after slavery and oppression. And that idea of reparations is an idea which has certain merit to it.
If you're historicizing, but what about if you're theologizing?
Theology and history have to work together. I'm not saying, again, when I'm saying here's racism in the Zohar, that's, to my mind, wrong. If you're talking about where did that idea come from, where did that racist impulse come from, that's where I put it into history. Now, when you're going to say, well, what about God as God, right? Then, as I've said many times, as we discussed many times, the theology is embedded in history because this is a theology of God in history. So it can't be excluded. Yes, in some ultimate sense, God is all good, God is all merciful, God shines light on everything and on everyone, and God is love for everything and for everyone. Baruch Barachem ala Aretz, Baruch Barachem ala Briot, what we say every morning in Baruch Shamar. That's the essence. Then we get into the messy history. How do you work this out? How do you get to that point? It's the starting point, and it's meant to be the ending point. But what are the steps in between? So I'll use, again, a very tricky, and complicated situation here in this country. I would say the end point that we would hope for is everybody under his vineyard and under his fig tree, and everybody lives the life that they want to live in peace and in harmony with everybody else. How do I get there? Where I am right now, reparations make sense. There are people that have been systematically forever, killed and subjugated and held down. And to say, okay, let's just stop now and now everybody can go about their business is wrong, because they can't. They need to be given something to make up for it. Affirmative action. They need to be given a makeup for all of the stuff that was taken away from them. We're not on a level playing field. To me, that's the Jewish image of we're going to have our suffering repaired, paid back. The people that treated us like garbage are going to come back and apologize and be nice to us.
So not to get us too much into contemporary sociology, but Isabel Wilkerson's book, Caste. I don't know if people have read it. It's
I read a review.
So my reaction is she's framing American caste structure, and she says we shouldn't talk about racism. That's just the external code. It's a structure. So we need to talk about casteism. So she compares American casteism to Indian Hindu casteism to Nazi Germany. And she bases it in Judeo-Christian theology, history. And I really reacted negatively to that framing as I was reading. I said, no, 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 no. And she goes back to Ham, and this would be another beautiful example that would add another piece to her structure, right? But I kept wanting to fight against that and say, yeah, there's pieces of that in there, but there's a lot of other stuff too that's working against that. That's giving us this sense of a liberation that's total for all and not particular. So I think there's a tension here for a good reason, and I'm not sure why, but I think it's keeping us, I think, honest in some way to not just idealize, but to deal concretely with our own inclination to do injustice, because that's in us as much as it is in, this victory for Jacob. It's in us, and we've got to be able to feel that and to understand its power and understand its abuse.
Thank you. I'm with you. I'm with you. If I didn't believe what you were saying, we wouldn't be studying the Zohar. I'm not interested in having a weekly session in Mein Kampf. To reduce the richness, by saying, oh, look, here's this piece of schmutz that really is a piece of schmutz, or that's really terrible, and therefore that's the whole thing, is too reductive. It's no good. I said last Shabbos, we have a prayer, which is, it's so strong to me. We wake up in the morning and we say, thank you, God, and my soul is so pure, and this is wonderful, and thank you, and then we go through, in the morning, and we listen to the cocks crow, and I can stretch, and I can put on my clothes and my shoes, and there's ground under my feet, and I walk out, and you've given me strength. It's all this wonderful, positive stuff. And then the very next, and we go, Gomel Chasadim Tovim. So, and you do such goodness. Now, first of all, just as a side point, a tangent, that bracha, the way we have it printed in our Siddur, is Gomel Chasadim Tovim Li'amo Yisrael. You do such loving goodness, loving kindness to your people Israel. But there is a reading, there is another version that says Gomel Chasadim Tovim Livriotav. You give loving kindness to your creatures. That's the version I recite. So this is a struggle from the very beginning. And then we have the next line, the next prayer is, right? Tatzilenu hayom v'chol yom me'azei panim u'me'azut panim u'me'adam ra u'mechaver ra u'me'shachein ra u'pega ra. That the next thing is, God, I'm about to go out to work, or I'm about to go out to Minyan, and I'm going to go out into the world. And guess what? There are bad people out there. There are vicious people. There are arrogant people. There are chutzpahdik people. There are difficult people. That can you just please keep me away from any of them? I don't want to have to bump into these people today. And you say this every single day. But you also say it about yourself. So that's the thing. You can identify vicious people out there, and you want to stay away from them. How do you identify? But how do you stay away from your own arrogance in doing that? How do you not become a person who wants to overlord over everybody else because you're the good one? So there it is. It's right in that. It's right in at the very beginning of your waking up to the world. You're going, this world is such a hard world. God, give me a break. Help me out a little bit, because you know what? If I have to start bumping into vicious people first thing in the morning, I will become a vicious person. Ben shu, ben brit, ben sheno, ben brit. Whether this person is one of my group, whether it's one person from the covenant or not, they're all over the place. This is a universal problem. So at least we acknowledge it. At least we acknowledge it. So yeah, I'm with you. I think that to me is the greatness of this tradition. It's willing to problematize things. It's willing to, it not only willing, it insists. It keeps on insisting on this. You know, the idea that the story of Jacob is put into the Torah, and we say, what is this terrible person? He suffers terribly for his deceits. And we're going to have a little bit of it here in the Zohar later, but the Torah doesn't celebrate his victory of getting the bracha, and therefore he lived happily ever after. The guy has a terrible, painful life, and he's being deceived right and left after this by all kinds of really disgusting people. So,
including his children,
by his own children, by his cousins and by his children. I mean, it's the Torah's, forget about the Zohar. The Torah presents the story with a very complicated approach, which really brings all of these questions fearlessly to the surface. And the underlying message of that is you know what? And therefore, it doesn't mean that therefore we give up. The Torah says, I can acknowledge every single one of these problems, and I'm going on. So, yeah, I think that's the mistake of what she does when she does that. And that was part of, it's like, just when you first started, no, let's not talk about racism. Let's talk about caste. It's already is stupid. Yes, you should talk about caste, and you should talk about what's with this. No, only this and not this. Keep it complicated. So yeah. All right.
Rabbi,
Who said something just now?
I had one more little comment.
Good.
When you talked earlier about why doesn't just God come down and in a dream wake everybody up and this is the truth and get on with it? I think about that a lot when I watch stupid TV shows, and you go, why don't you just tell them, right? Quit going on with the deception. But then the show would be over and you wouldn't have a movie, right? And I think that's part of this truth of being alive, right? Is that we all get pulled into deception and power and what it gives us and those struggles. And that's the world that we're living in. It's been a lifelong struggle for me to realize there's gray area. I've always wanted to be like, come on, tell the truth, right? And I think that's, again, what this is helping us figure out how to get through that. There's not just going to be, hey, this is the good guy, this is the bad guy, that's it. No, you've got to deal with these things that we internalize. It feels good to be the overlord and to not be so sweaty all the time.
So one thing is, it's interesting. Is it a coincidence that you're getting to appreciate the gray areas as you're getting gray? So I don't know. Is there something connected there? Yeah, and then we go back again to the other side, right? Jacob is really the good guy. Esau is really the bad guy. We have to keep on playing with that story, and then complicate it again, and then start again, and then complicate it again, and azoy weiter, and that's the way we just keep on doing it. Yeah, but but it's not an eternal recurrence thing. The hope is that you grow from it. The hope is that there actually is progress, that there is some kind of enlightenment that you get from doing that. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just an obsession. Right? All right, we have a couple of more minutes. And we're up to, so Rabbi Chizkiah asks this question, right? So Rabbi Chizkiah says, reality check. Wait a second, read the verse. According to this verse, Esav also got the same bracha. So what are you making a big deal about all of this? What's the answer? Rabbi Shimon replied.
Rabbi Shimon replied, not so. This unlike that, one unlike the other. How separated are the rungs? Of Jacob is written, may God give you, while of this one is written, will be.
Okay, so what's the difference? God, right? In the blessing to Jacob, it says, may God give you the fat of the land and the all the stuff from the heavens and the abundance and all that. And in the blessing to Esav, it goes, from the fat of the earth will be your dwelling. No mention of God. So the blessing for Jacob is that it's God's gift, and the blessing for Esav is just natural, material facts. This is the way it is these days. And of course, what's going to happen later, that's the implication. Keep going. Of Jacob is written.
Of Jacob is written, of dew of heaven and the fat of the earth, while of Esav is written, from the fat of the earth and the dew of heaven.
What's the difference? Which one comes first? Heaven comes first in Jacob's blessing, and then the earth. And in Esav's blessing, the earth is mentioned first, and then heaven. So that's the difference. I'll mention it anyway. I was talking to somebody who said that they heard somebody else say, how come, to get political again, how come when one side sends people to watch the vote, it's harassment? And when the other side sends people to watch the vote, it's protecting that all votes should be counted. Isn't it the same thing? What's the difference? So do people understand what I'm trying to bring out? To me, and to I think anybody who's there's an obvious difference. It's so superficial to say, well, they're sending people to watch the vote and they're sending, so it's exactly the same thing. Isn't it equivalent? You must have a bias about one or the other. And Rabbi Shimon says, no, there's actually a tangible, real difference. It's not the same thing, right? So it's a little bit about what's going on. Okay, page 300.
This is unlike that. How widely separated the rungs. For look, of Jacob is written, may God give you of the dew of heaven, supernal dew, flowing from the Ancient of Days, called dew of heaven, supernal heaven, dew flowing through the rung of heaven, and from there to the holy apple orchard. And of the fat of the earth, supernal earth, land of the living. Whereas concerning Esav on earth here below, in heaven here below, Jacob above Esav.
No, Jacob, above.
Esav below.
Right. Okay, so here we have Rabbi Shimon getting very poetic. And not only is the distinction that God is mentioned in Jacob's blessing and in Esav's blessing, it's not mentioned, but the whole reality that is being talked about is a different reality, right? So, Yitein lecha Elokim mital hashamayim. So what dew from heaven is this about? So we have the Atik Yomin. The Atik Yomin, the Ancient of Days. So look at note 301, please.
Dew of heaven, supernal dew flowing from the Ancient of Days. The flow of emanation from Keter. The first, primordial Sephirah, who is known as the Ancient Days, based on Daniel 7:9. The Ancient of Days sat. The hair.
The Ancient of Days sits.
And it says sits?
The Ancient of Days sits, the hair.
Okay. The hair on his head like clean fleece. His throne, flames of fire. This dew proceeds to Tiferet, known as heaven.
Okay, and then Pirkei Rebbe Lezer, Rabbi Yehuda said, go ahead.
In the time to come, the Blessed Holy One will bring down a dew of revival, reviving the dead. Rabbi Tanhum said, from where does it descend? From the head of the Blessed Holy One. In the time to come, he will shake the hair of his head and bring down a dew of revival, reviving the dead, as is said, I was asleep, but my heart was awake, for my head is drenched with dew.
So this is God speaking, and this is the image of the heavenly dew that is the source of all life, that comes from the highest realm of divinity that we can imagine, which is taking its name from the book of Daniel, Atik Yomi, right? The old one of days, the ancient one of days, with the white hair and beard, exactly the image of God that everybody says they don't believe in anymore. But that's Daniel's image. And that benevolent, life-giving, gentle, ancient one drips down droplets of life and goodness down to heaven. So it's not that heaven is the source of the dew. The dew comes from higher than heaven, but it goes into heaven. And heaven is the next lower level of divinity that we can grasp a little bit more. That actually is also identified with Jacob. And then going down to the holy apple orchard, which is the lower part of the interface between God and the world, Shechina. So we'll stop here, and hopefully we'll be able to pick up next time from that place. Yesher koach to everyone. Okay, there's something here. There's a nice connection to a recent book by Isabel Wilkerson, Cast. That's what you mentioned. Thank you for writing it down. Good. All right. I just saw it. Yesher koach to everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.